everybody. So hello Max. Perfect.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Do you want to give a brief introduction? What do you do for the people who don't know you in the room?
Absolutely. For the past, I think it's 4.5 years now, I'm a content creator on social media, mainly Instagram and TikTok, about queer history, queer politics. It's become more and more political because as I was creating content, you realize how much it is also politicized. And yeah, everything, basically seeing the world and politics and society through a queer lens, yeah.
Okay, amazing. Why does this topic matter to you?
Well, firstly, because I'm queer myself, so it is the way I see the world. But then also because, especially when it comes to queer history, there's so much of it. There's such a rich queer history. And I hear, especially in politics, so many times people saying, oh, all of these identities, it's a modern trend. It didn't used to be a thing. And that's just not true. Because queer people have always existed. Maybe some of the labels or some of the terms for it haven't existed, but the people have always been there. And so it's not something, it's not a trend, it's not something that's just made up. It's just that these histories oftentimes weren't allowed to be told, or they were taken out of the history books. But we've always been here, we're not going anywhere, and we matter, and we've always mattered. And I think it's so many stories that deserve to be told. And if I can reach people with those and tell these stories, I think that's a big win.
That's amazing. When you create content, I come from the video industry, so I know editing and filming takes a while. When you create content, do you have the person in mind who doesn't have a clue what the term queer means? Or do you kind of like create content for a target audience that already know maybe a bit about queer history?
I think it's interesting because I didn't really think about that when I started creating content, but then a lot of people tell me, well, I already know what you're talking about because I'm part of the community, but it's great because I can share this video with my mom, with my uncle, people who maybe aren't as familiar. And I think that's great because there's a lot of people who fall for also queer-phobic narratives because they don't know any queer people themselves. And so maybe they don't have an access point to those topics because nobody's explained it to them ever. And so I'm like, oh, somebody has to explain it. I'm happy to be that person because if somebody then realizes, oh, it's nothing to be afraid of, it's really quite simple, then they don't fall for these things as easily. And it's easy to just reach people and tell them, well, look at this, it's not a danger, it's something that's just natural, and if you have a problem with queer people, it's just part of nature and reality, so you just have a problem with reality.
Absolutely, and you educate.
Yeah.
You also educate, of course, a lot. One of your most viral videos has 400,000 likes on social media, and it's about a German politician who says she's not queer, but is married to a woman.
Yeah.
So maybe some of you know who you're talking about, but what do you think, like in 2026, having such a broad audience yourself, and also people know her that maybe are not in the target audience that you're aiming for. So what is your take on that?
I think it's such a contradiction in itself because she's very clearly making politics that represent everything that is against what she does. Like all her entire relationship, family, she's married to a woman of color, has kids with her, and her party is against all of that, like very directly. And I think it kind of translates, because you can see a lot of the voters who vote for her party, they would be the ones most negatively affected by the policies of this party. So it's really this contradiction, and the question is how can we kind of reach them or change their minds, because clearly just by logical argumentation you don't really get far, because it's so obvious that, and I think it also represents this trend which sadly I think is seen in parts of the community where especially gay people distance themselves from other part of the community, like from trans people, from drag queens, and say, well, we're gay, but we're not this. We're LGBT without the T. And I think, in terms of queer history, we owe pride and we owe all of our rights to trans people and trans people of color who started the movement. But also, if you now support the people who take away trans rights, do you actually believe they're not going to come after your rights next? Like, it's so obvious, and you're like, do you think they're making an exception for you because now you're in this position? No, they won't, and it's sometimes baffling that people don't believe that, and they're like, oh, but they can't be against gay people because she's the head of the party, and I'm like, well, nobody can explain why she does it. Doesn't mean that the party is in any way for the community. It really isn't.
Yeah, true. On a personal note, Meta is right now kind of like removed the fact-checking. X, the platform, is also full of misinformation. content around topics LGBTQI+ is getting flagged and suppressed from the algorithm and everything. So how do you navigate that? Because you're still a content creator and you need to rely on those platforms.
It is really tricky because we don't only have to think about what we say, but also how to say it, and sometimes use different words and avoid terms, and it gets a little absurd if I want to talk about the rise in queerphobic violence, I can't really name the violence, I can't really talk about all of the queer identities because those are all terms that would get flagged, but at the same time, the most flagrant hate on there will just stay up, and even if you report it, nothing happens. So you kind of have to navigate that, but I think this also shows that it's a reason why I keep doing it, because I think if all queer creators stop doing it, the one thing that would stay up there is the queerphobic content. And then the people that we just talked about, that's all then they know about the community. So we really need to keep balancing those scales and keep creating the pro-queer content, defend ourselves and kind of show our side of things, because otherwise we just leave it to them. But it is a struggle, and one strategy is also to collaborate between profiles to kind of try to share the reach and circumvent this. But it's difficult because the platforms don't really reward clarity and solutions, it rewards conflicts and emotion. Yeah. And so you try to kind of find a way to positively frame topics, even though the algorithm is going to set up for the exact opposite. Yeah. Yeah.
True. I also say it a lot because I teach as well, and I also say we cannot leave the internet only for the people with the bad content, without any labels, but we also need voices, strong voices on the other topics as well. So we cannot leave the room and say, okay, we leave it for you. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the topics that you cover, governments want them banned in school or in the public media and everything. And most of the time, as you said, it's very controversial. And of course, there is a lot of hate around some topics. And the hate comes on social media. It's kind of natural, and sometimes it comes hard. So how do you protect yourself, and what is your strategy in handling hate or a shitstorm that you get?
Well, fortunately, there are institutions like in Germany, I don't know if they're in Austria as well, Hate Aid, who take comments and they report them, and they actually help you do a lawsuit even, because the internet isn't a lawless space, and you have your rights and you don't have to take the abuse and insults, which do come. Absolutely, that's absolutely a thing. But I think at the same time, there is so much positive feedback as well, and it really outweighs it, because I know if there's a faceless profile who are like, oh, I hate gay people, I'm like, well, they probably hated gay people if I did my video or not. so hey, okay, that's fine. But if some person tells me, wow, you really helped me see things differently, or wow, this really made me feel seen in a way, that's worth so much more. And so that's kind of what you have to remind yourself of,
Amazing. If people know your content, you talk about Alexander the Great, his sexuality, you talk about Bavarian school policies, and in a rather short format, in roughly 60 seconds. If somebody else wants to do or get more into content creation, is there a formula that you follow? Because of course, there's a topic, again, our speakers have the same problem. They can stand here and talk for an hour about the topic that they're passionate about, but it's hard to compress it in. How do you do that?
It is really tough, because whenever I do research on a topic, there's so much interesting things that I would like to talk about, and you have to leave most of it, 95%, on the cutting room floor, which is so sad. But then at the same time, obviously, a 9-minute video, it's just not gonna, because the algorithm doesn't reward it. So once again, you kind of have to make it work. I think it's just learning by doing, because I did look it up. I've done almost 1,000 videos by now.
Wow.
Over because there used to be a daily rate, and you just kind of get a feeling for it. When we research, when I write the script, I'm like, oh, this much is gonna be roughly 60 to 90 seconds, and then what's a good hook that's gonna start a video in a good way, what performs well, should I put a picture in there, and so on. So kind of get a feeling of what works, what doesn't, and then it just kind of becomes automatic. But it's a struggle. It's just to kill your darlings, because everything you would like to talk about, you can't put all of it in there. So maybe a YouTube channel or podcast would be a good next project, just to do deep dives, because there's so much to talk about. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And my last question to you, maybe we have somebody in the room who also thinks, hey, I have a voice, I have knowledge, I also have a phone. What advice would you give them to start on social media or any other platform or channel?
Yeah, I would say if you have those two things, if you have a phone and something to say, that's really all you need. It's all the equipment I have. I have a window and a phone. Yeah, I don't have a studio. I just got my first really nice microphone a week ago. Nice. So 4 years in.
After 1,000 videos.
yeah, because I was like, no, it sounds a little weird. But the thing is, if you have something to say, I think there's people who will want to hear it. But on the one hand, you should be very secure in who you are and what you're talking about, because you will probably have people who criticize you and what you say. So you should be very firm in that. And then also what I always say is, it can bring so much joy, but make social media a part of your life, don't make it your entire life, because once you start defining yourself by views and clicks, it's not really healthy, and you should always be able to put the phone down and be offline, talk to people in real life, because that's the real connections. And otherwise, if you're just online all the time, it really, well, that was for me, it really affects your mental health as well, because it is a space that really lives off controversy and emotions and conflict. And but yeah, I think if you get positive feedback and you can see you're reaching people, you're making a difference, can be really rewarding. So I would tell everyone, just try it and see if it's for you, and if it works, it's a lot of fun.
I believe that also, like, collaboration, as you said, is always a good factor. It's the same that we're doing with TEDx. We have partners, we have volunteers.
Yeah, you meet so many
it's
nice
always,
people. Yeah.
And if you're just by yourself, it sometimes can get a little bit lonely or isolating.
Yeah.
So that's everything from my side.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Thanks
much for joining us.
Yeah, and happy Pride,
Everything.
everyone.
Thank you. Happy Pride.
Thanks so much.